Shalom again, everybody. Ariel Tzadok here from the KosherTorah School, found online at www.KosherTorah.com. Bringing to you today's daily lesson in the Sefer Yetzirah. This is lesson 41, Aleph Mem, M. And it is, of course, dedicated to the safety, health, well-being, and prosperity of everyone around the world right now, facing the trials and tribulations and obstacles that are before us in these times. Remember, every obstacle is really an opportunity. Look for what you need to find, and it's the only way that you will ever find it. So, let's get down to business. We are in the second chapter in the third Mishnah, and we introduced, of course, the concept of our 22 foundational letters. Remember, a letter isn't the shape of its form, even though we do have literature in our Judaic tradition which emphasizes the importance of the shape of the Katav Ashurit letters that we use today. It's all well and good, but just remember, that's not, shall we say, etched in stone. It's not Hakikah. It's an embellishment, a moralistic, ethical way of understanding, and that these teachings come, needless to say, from the insights and mind of their individual authors. And of course, the more extreme elements in our religion will say, no, it all comes from God, it comes from Elijah the prophet. And everything comes from God and Elijah the prophet. Let's just pay lip service to those people who, shall we say, are unfortunately unable to think beyond the rigid little space that they've created for themselves. It's very, very bad. Now, why is that bad? Whenever you see an individual, that could be religious, secular, it doesn't matter, it's a psychological point of view or persuasion of an absolutist mentality, wherein which it's only this way and no other way. This is the way it is, and I can prove it to you, and yada, yada, yada. We're familiar with the attitude. Like I said, you could have religious extremists in the Judaic, Christian, Hindu, Buddhist, Muslim. Every tradition was going to say, this is what it says, this is what it means, that's it. We have secular people who, with regards to their attitudes and opinions, this is the way it's supposed to be, this is what everyone is supposed to do, and this is the way it's supposed to be, etc. What's wrong with expressing an opinion? Well, in our Western civilization, if you remember, we're supposed to embrace a concept called freedom of speech, in which you are supposed to have the right to express your view or opinion on a topic without, obviously without it being necessarily cause for violence or hatred, etc., without it being repressed or silenced. Fine. That is an expression in our modern cultural expression. What the heck does any of this have to do with the Sefer Yetzirah, you might ask? The answer, my dear friends, is everything. Don't you get it? Our Sefer Yetzirah, you think in that limited narrowness, is a book of religion and Kabbalah, and it has to be understood this way. And I remind people, if you've ever studied the Sefer Yetzirah in the Hebrew, or for that matter, any Hebrew book, Bible, Talmud, commentaries, you will find that we have no shortage of independent, innovative, and original thinkers who write books of commentary. We have them by literally the thousands. Recently, I went on one of my Hebrew book supplier websites. I have a link to it at our KosherTorah.com link page. And I went to his Kabbalah page to see all the different books of Kabbalah that are available today, making sure, I'm not missing anything. And I was curious. I wondered how many books are out there. Like my day, when I was out there, in the early days, back in the 70s and 80s, maybe had half a dozen books available. Today, his website has over 1,000 different texts. That's pretty cool. 1,000 different writings that people have put together. So we learn from this that those who are so rigid, it's only this way. No, it's not. because everyone else has their own way. Now, why is this vital and appropriate to discuss here with our Sefer Yetzirah? Because as we are learning now about the nature of these foundational letters, which are sounds, what again is a sound? A sound gives rise to words. Words become the vessel, the vehicle, the vessel of communication through which I'm able to take my thoughts up here, out through here to connect to you and your brain up there. Remember we discussed this in the previous class? If we were psychically connected, we'd have a mind-to-mind communication, what we call voice. Voice to voice, mind to mind. We don't have that. So voice has to descend into word. Word has to project out to be heard in sound and then re-enter the mind. It's kind of like going all out and about as opposed to direct. But be that as it may, if you remember, we learned the power of what we called hadar, the right, the left, the center, and the flow of movement, the tension necessary for there to be structure. Now, we say, chakakan bakol. We engrave this, we say, in the voice. The voice is the psychic telepathic source from which comes the image from above, which we're going to project out. Now, at a second level, the voice is just a mere pure sound like we spoke yesterday. And then we say, hatzavan be'ruach. Ruach, like we learned in the first chapter, is that intuitive psychic presence which projects, remember, ruach Elohim Chaim, to the ruach, which then becomes water, fire. Okay, that's one way of interpreting this. Or we interpret it in a second way as looking at the ruach being actual breath, air from below the diaphragm and the like. That's a second way. Kava'an bepe, established now in the mouth. Now, the mouth then creates all the different words and the structure and combination of letters which create all the different languages of the world. A point that we're going to be very clear, and when we get into the next Mishnah, we're going to introduce the 231 gates, the combination and permutations of letters. When you have combinations and permutations of letters, guess what you find? You find that way, which is the only right way, isn't necessarily the only way at all. There are other ways to look at things. This is what we spoke about, those 5 things we spoke about in the previous Mishnah. Remember, we're supposed to grave and to carve and to permutate and weigh and then reverse. So any and all ideas and beliefs that we hold, that we have, look at our modern divide in the social, political, religious, and even psychological arenas. And if you really examine and analyze every single structure, you will find that it has both merit and value and demerit and, if you will, even disqualification. Everything from the old biblical metaphors, a combination of the tree of knowledge, good and evil. How do I know what's one from the other, you might ask? Well, that's what our Sefer Yetzirah, from the meditative or prophetic point, actually comes to teach us. Rab Chaim, even in his commentary, says right here, I quote to you, Yesh penimiyut upenimiyut lepenimiyut. We have the inner way of looking at things, and then the inner of the inner. Sod, and what we call sod disod. We've discussed this in previous classes as well. Understand now that whenever we have a construct of thought, and you are so absolutely convinced that it's the only right way, I'm sure it's the only right way for you from your present perspective. But remember, in this quantum reality of our universe, perception defines reality. That is something that we know very well in science. Why is that important to understand this? Because the techniques of movement with the letters is to help us expand our awareness of things, so that instead of something being rigid, like the letters of a word forming a single form, we could rearrange those letters and come up with something completely different. It doesn't matter the language. The famous Baal Shem Tov, founder of the Hasidic movement, spoke about doing yichudim, which are spiritual unification exercises. And some people interpret that as literally being only using Hebraic names and letters as found in the page of this or that book. Well, the Baal Shem Tov, said, no. We can look anywhere in the universe and see and to discover great secrets. One of the techniques that I do, that I love to do, I try to find significance in numbers. If I'm ever in the store and I watch what my costs are for the day. I went to the store one time and I purchased some items and it cost $26.32. And I smiled. Oh, look at that. 26 is you'd give off, okay? 32 is left, all right? Heart of God. I looked at that. Do I interpret that as a good sign or anything mystical? No. But I look for symbols, if you will. Same thing when I see drivers, license plates on vehicles going by. I always look for significance in things. Anything and everything that I try to look at, I try to reinterpret. I use the Sefer Yetzirah techniques, and I can rearrange letters, rearrange words, and see things that other people don't see. Some will say, that's all in your head and that's all in your imagination. Maybe so. But my head and my imagination, like your head and your imagination, is not limited by the bone of my skull. The mind expands, it has like what we call a backdoor, and connection to that collective consciousness. So rather than me always trying to think my thoughts out into my words to project out to you like this, I still try to sometimes go out the back door and connect into something bigger. So that by connecting to that bigger, I got more to put into the head, to put through the words to get to you. You do the same. When we're talking about now sound, we're going to introduce the gates. And now we're going to have to get into a meditative element of the teachings, because that's what the teachings are, in all due respect. This is not theory, it's practice. When we recite letters, there's a way and then there's a way. And that's what it says here about engraving in voice, carving with the wind, with the ruach. Let's interpret it now this way as breath. And of course, establishing mouth. This is what we discussed a wee bit yesterday. When we use sound, science knows about sound. Sound oscillations can heal or destroy. They can build or break. Sound, remember it said in the beginning, God created the world through sound. Sounds are vibrations of harmonics, and anyone who is especially in the musical field, you recognize the value and the importance of proper pitch, sound, harmonies, and rhythms, and all this movements of energy. Well, that is what voice is supposed to give you. The highest level of reading a Torah, as we know, isn't reading the words, the letters written on the scroll, or pronouncing those words correctly with the vowels, which are not written in the scroll. The highest form of what we call the ta'amim, the cantillations, which is the chanting of the Torah. And when you get someone who really understands and can flow the chant right, it's not only very melodic, it can be very relaxing and almost be hypnotic. I don't see that so much in the Ashkenazi tradition, but in some of the Sephardi traditions, more so the Iraqi, old Iraqi. I've heard some of these old Iraqi Baal Kores, we call them, Torah readers. And when you read it, you just like go off into a trance because they just read it with such intent. The voice, which that inner psychic connects through how they really are able to bellicose, get that voice into words out through proper breath, it's almost like operatic. Now, in the few minutes we have left, let's discuss this. Anyone who knows music knows, or let me rephrase, anyone who knows voice, singing. You've heard opera singers. You've heard people who have voices that literally can hypnotize you. Well, the voice, right? Kudos to Dune. The voice has the power to build or break, create or destroy. And that is why music and singing is such a vital component in mind control. Mind control, that's right. You heard it right. Mind control. You want to control your mind to ascend to heights? As it says in the Bible, you had the Hug Nevi'im, the school of the biblical prophets. They would sing and they would dance and they would use music and they had special tonal technologies. The Levites in the temple, when they would sing, they would create certain types of pitch and rhythm when they were reciting the Psalms that had created a resonant sonic vibration that had a hypnotic effect upon anybody who was subject to those audio sounds. The high priest, when he would approach the Ark of the Covenant to communicate with the Kavod, he had to recite certain tonal sounds in certain ways, which would activate, vibrate the the stones, the gemstones on the breastplate, activated by the Urim and Tumim in his chest, and it would actually cause a vibration on the Ark of the Covenant, which would create a life form stream, which would animate the cherubim. So that's the power of proper sound. Most of us today don't have that ability. You have to really understand how to be a singer. So all the letters that we have here, the 5 places of the mouth, as we discussed in our previous class, you have, all right, the throat, the palate, the tongue, the teeth, the lips. And we have all the different combinations of the letters. We discussed the head and the ein and all the rest of these, okay? What's important isn't so much the proper pronunciation, but the proper oscillation. Getting out the proper tonal inside expression. For those of you who know martial arts, when we talk about Tantian, we're bringing up the chi. The chi is the inner essence, the inner fire, the prima mater, the hyuli, like we spoke about. When you are able, through your deep breathing, able to oscillate the sounds properly, your entire body will vibrate. And the combination of the letters in different forms will create different structures, will create different realities. Getting back to how we began. For those who say there's only one way and that's the only way. No, it's not. And these sounds, compare them to, if you will, the energetic frequency that moves all vibrations. Think about like if you have like the continents on the earth, you have the tectonic plate understanding, right? The continents float on lava and they're always in a state of movement and flux. That's why we have like earthquakes and stuff like that. Well, that is how voice and breathing creates the proper words or tone of voice, the proper tones and applications of letters, which then create for us the forms, the tonal sonic forms, which create or destroy. So in modern terms, like we said, you could use proper tonal voice rhythm pattern to create the highest level, or its opposite, bringing it down. Sex, drugs, and rock and roll. I remember when the music of rock and roll was elevating, uplifting. And look how it's been perverted and twisted to bring down the soul. Do you know plants actually respond to music? Go Google that, check it out. See the types of resonance and harmony that is created by certain types of music and the destruction and breakdown of other types of music. It's all sound. It's all technology. It's all science. So don't think that this is just religion. Because as you'll see from essays that I've posted on my Facebook and of course, Patreon pages, science and religion really have to be one and the same. Check out our meditative courses online. See the other things that we have to offer for you at our KosherTorah School. Get ready. We haven't even yet begun to go down the rabbit hole. Ariel Tzadok here, KosherTorah School, KosherTorah.com. See you all next time.